From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. Nick Barris coming to you live on a Tuesday, so live and direct, not on tape, and we can take your phone calls. We'll get the number up in a moment. If you want to join in the conversation, we're going to be talking legal issues this morning, legal matters, elder law specifically with regard to a lot of things happening within, as it affects just about all of us, the pandemic time and again. We'll see where we can go on this. We can go to more general questions, but many folks right now dealing with loved ones who are in assisted living facilities or nursing homes and how things are set up in terms of gaining access and addressing issues they may have, everything from, keeping the payments going to making sure they get the medical examinations they need while many of them, if a facility is doing things right, really limiting visitors and limiting those who can come and go into these places. We can talk a bit about that if you'd like. If you have questions about living wills or reverse mortgages or perhaps something with regard to Social Security and taking benefits early, anything along those lines too, we can talk about it with our guest this morning who really knows his stuff. He's with one of the top elder law firms in the country, Takis and McGinnis, and Chris Johnson is an up-and-comer there as well. Are you a partner yet, Chris?
I am, Nick. Thanks so much for the kind
I should have known. A former Marine, he just goes in there and kicks butt.
We try and do our best every day, Nick.
Well, you guys, you're terrific. And you know what I think about Tim and Barbara. And it's good to have you with us this morning on social media or on Zoom. And so we'll get into this. We may take a few phone calls along the way. The number's up on the screen, 737-7587. But I thought maybe, Chris, I'd give you a real broad thing, and maybe you can give me a little bit of direction on what you think you're hearing right now from many of your clients, of course, against the backdrop of this pandemic. What are some of the key elder law issues that maybe you're dealing with that are being affected more by this pandemic?
I think the facilities are having, shall we say, the hardest time because they're on the front lines with it and they have to deal with it every day. And I think, like anyone else, they were dealing with something brand new and it was difficult at first, and we're trying to get our hands around what are the right protocols, what are the right procedures. And I think early on they made a very wise decision and said, we're just going to play it extra safe, given that their population is what's playing out to be probably the most at-risk population in our society. And so they chose to go with a pretty heavy-handed lockdown, which I think was the right decision in order to protect their residents. And now, as we hope, we're starting to see the back end of this. I know we've seen a recent rise again, which hopefully will be a much smaller, what they call the second peak of the curve. Then it is opening prudently. And how many of these protocols that they have implemented are just wise going forward to mitigate any future medical issues, medical outbreaks like this that they have to deal with. And so I think the facilities are learning a lot. They also have to remember, and they're doing a very, very good job of it, the best they can, that life goes on. And so they're accommodating families, whether that's bringing a loved one to a window so they can see their family members, whether it's facilitating having legal documents executed, because the people inside those facilities, they still have rights, they still have a life, they still have things that need to happen, and they need to help make that happen. And so they have very much been on the front line of this and have been working exceedingly hard trying to take the best care of their residents that they can. I hope that out of this perhaps comes a new look at, is this the best way we can handle senior living? And maybe we can look at, are there better ways to do this in the future and have some real good come out of this pandemic?
No kidding. Well, I know Takis and McGinnis, is multifaceted, and you have nurses on staff and the like. And I'm just wondering, too, about telemed and how that's developing, because I can even speak to my own family. They're like you said, in one of these facilities in Idaho that has been very secure, right? I can't go in and see them. Now, my folks are at a point, too, where they're on certain medicines where they sometimes have to consult with a physician. In the past, my brother would go pick them up and take them to the office and talk. That's not an option. In fact, I was just talking to him him yesterday about how we proceed moving forward with some of these doctors so that they continue writing the prescriptions, but they need to do update checkups. Have you run into this? Is it telemed? Can you do it over Zoom, where maybe my brother arranges a Zoom interview with the doctor? They can't do the physical exam, really, unless the doctor comes over. I guess technically, I mean, they're not prisoners. My brother could go take my parents to the office. We just don't want to take them out of that safe setting unless we absolutely have to.
That's absolutely right. And I think telemedicine really got a shot in the arm. I think telemedicine is one of those emerging service lines that I think people were a little timid about. I think there's something comforting about having your doctor in the room with you, and I think that's the way most people felt. Hey, if I see my doctor, I want my doctor there. I want to be able to talk to him, answer questions. I don't want to have this strange medium between us. But now with the pandemic and everything that's going on, I think people became very comfortable with telemedicine very quickly because it kept them safer. And I think, like anything else, it's a kind of a case-by-case basis on what things you can and what things you can't use telemedicine for. But most definitely, I know there were probably a lot of, I hate to call them unnecessary, but a lot of in-person visits that could have been done remotely in the past that now are to ensure the safety not only of the patient, but the patient's neighbors, all the other residents, the staff. The fewer interactions we have in and out of that bubble, the less likely we are to transmit a disease. And as the more we learn about this, I think the better we handle it. And I think we're all hopeful that we'll have a vaccine here and be through this. And on the back end, I'm hoping sometime by the end of the year. I really am hoping.
Yeah, you and me both. Well, I think the telemed is probably what we're going to be doing with my folks to hook up with some of their physicians moving forward, at least for now. We've got some calls coming in before we take our first break. Let's go to Ricky. Ricky, good morning. What's your question or comment, Ricky?
Yeah, one thing about, I sent my mother-in-law a letter, and she still ain't received it. And I put a self-addressed stamp envelope. If she didn't get it, it's supposed to come back here, but it didn't. So they had to got it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're having trouble corresponding with her by mail. Is she someplace farther away from you? She doesn't live nearby, right?
Well, she lives about 13 miles away, but you can't go see her.
Yeah.
She's in nursing home, and I mailed her a letter, and they said she never did receive it.
Okay, are you able to call her?
Well, we try, but it keeps getting messed up somehow.
Okay. If someone is having issues like that with a nursing home, what do you suggest? I mean, I know there's ombudsman. This could have been an honest thing where they misplace a letter, but in terms of getting, answers along these lines.
Yeah, there are a lot of places in the chain where that could have gone wrong. That's really unfortunate because our seniors need that communication now more than ever. I would start by reaching out to the administrative staff at the facility and ask them, are you seeing these disruptions as a regular course? And try and understand, is it on the mail end? Is it on the facility end? Maybe I misaddressed it, sort of thing, and try and figure out where it went wrong. And what I would do is I would send a second letter very quickly thereafter and see if that one gets through. And you'll start to see quickly, is it a systemic issue or was it just a one-time unfortunate incident? And I'm sorry you're dealing with that. The staff there should make every effort to connect you with a phone call. And I would get on the phone with them. If you are trying to communicate via phone and it keeps dropping for one reason or another, that is an issue I would bring up with the staff and say, hey, please help me facilitate this. I need to be able to talk to my mother-in-law, and I'm sure they will oblige.
Okay, yeah, just follow up. And yeah, a letter, he's absolutely right too, Chris is. Someone, you can talk to him on the phone, but I think especially nowadays with these folks being so separate from their loved ones, getting a letter from someone and being able to open it and hold it, especially there's seniors too, who aren't all that socially savvy anyway, that is something really important that she gets her hands on. So I hope, Ricky, don't give up on that. Let's go to Granger. Granger, good morning. Hi, Granger.
Hey, listen, first of all, in the 1990s, I was involved in a National Institute of Mental Health study about telemedicine that covered about half of Oregon, and it was highly successful. We were dealing with mental health, not physical health, which is different, but the patients didn't seem to care that the person was 250 miles away. And my question, okay, that's a comment. Okay.
Yeah.
My question is, I've got a 94-year-old mother in a senior facility, and I just wanted to ask your expert what he thinks of what the legislature is doing now about liability exemptions. I mean, if they're following all the rules, I think, and the place where my mother is doing it right by the book. I'm very happy. But what about the places that don't have adequate staffing, don't have adequate training, don't have supplies? So if you could comment on that, and I'll take it, I'll get off the phone.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know some malpractice attorneys who were involved, by the way, with Chris, this nursing facility that's in Gallatin that we've all seen in the news that early on had some real problems with a real wildfire spread of COVID there, and there's some lawsuits there. Now, those are grandfathered in, but I don't know if you're aware, and I'm sure you are, that the legislature is looking at placing some liability limits on businesses being sued, including nursing homes, if there's an issue here. And I wonder how you see that playing out.
I see it as one of those real difficult issues that our politicians are tasked with dealing with. And the difficult issue is this. We need those frontline staff people there, and we need them to show up to work. We need them to care for our most vulnerable community in our society. And it is vitally important that they feel comfortable to do their job. It is a pandemic, and there are people, unfortunately, that are going to get sick. Our job is to make that as few people in our society as possible. At the same token, and Granger, you bring up a great point about there are places that are understaffed or are not meeting the mark. And I think I have not read the legislation yet. I don't practice in the malpractice field. What I understand, because we do read and keep up the speed on it, is that they are attempting to strike that balance between making sure that if people who are truly wronged have an avenue of recourse in our civil courts, which is very important and part of our society, while at the same token shielding, almost a la the Good Samaritan, shielding these people, these facilities who are doing the right thing, who are putting in all the proper protocols, who are making sure that they are adequately staffed, from the fact that people are going to get sick about this. And we want to keep those numbers down. But if everyone thought that they're going to get sued if they show up to work, unfortunately, we're going to have people that don't show up to work, lots of people, and then every facility will be understaffed. And then we haven't served any of our elderly community. So it's a difficult test. In the law, you'll find a lot of areas where what we're trying to do is strike a fair balance between the interests of all parties involved. And I hope that answers your question, Granger. It's a great question and a tough one.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. We'll go to the break because I don't know. The way I look at it, I'm skeptical of that kind of legislation that's maybe going to be in favor of the businesses. And I understand businesses need to be protected with that balance. But to me, if there's neglect and it's proven, you don't need to have a law to protect. If one of these facilities is neglectful, okay, and not doing what they should, they ought to have their butts sued. I have no problem with that, and they deserve it, okay? If it's not neglectful and you bring a lawsuit, a court of law is going to realize, well, there's no neglect here. They did everything they could, and COVID still got in. And, you know, a jury is going to be rational and say, okay, well, you don't have a case. But if there's neglect, businesses don't need protect from that. If they're not doing it right, they need to get nailed, period. End of story. Yeah, I don't know if you agree, but I'm right. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more of your calls and questions with our guest right after this.